Good afternoon. During this month of December devotions, we as your staff will focus on the Christmas story. And today, we're going to take a look at Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary was a young girl, probably only about 12 or 13 years old, when the angel Gabriel came to her. She had recently become engaged to a carpenter named Joseph. Mary was an ordinary Jewish girl looking forward to marriage, but suddenly her life changed forever. Mary was known as the mother of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world. She was a willing servant, trusting in God and obeying His call. Mary is mentioned throughout the Gospels and also in Acts 1:14. She was from Nazareth in Galilee. Her husband was Joseph. Two of her relatives were Zechariah and Elizabeth. Her children were Jesus, James, Joseph, Judas, Simon, and she had daughters as well. Mary was a wife, a mother, and a homemaker. So where do we find Mary in the Bible? The book of Luke contains the most references to Mary and places the greatest emphasis on her role in God's plan. She is mentioned by name in the genealogy of Jesus, in the Annunciation, in Mary's visit with Elizabeth, in the birth of Jesus, in the visit of the wise men, in Jesus' presentation at the temple, and in the Nazarenes' rejection of Jesus. In Acts, she is referred to as Mary, the mother of Jesus, where she participates in the community of believers and prays with the apostles. The Gospel of John never mentions Mary by name, but refers to the mother of Jesus in the account of the wedding at Cana and standing near the cross at the crucifixion. So we want to look at the calling that God put on Mary's life. She was fearful and troubled, and she found herself in the presence of the angel Gabriel listening to his announcement. She could have never expected to hear the most incredible news, that she would have a child and her son would be the Messiah. Although she could not comprehend how she would conceive the Savior, she responded to God with a sincere belief and obedience. Although her calling held a great honor, it would also demand great suffering too. There would be pain in her childbirth and motherhood, as well as the privilege and the blessing of being the mother of the Messiah. An angel told Mary in Luke 1:28 that she was highly favored by God. This phrase simply meant that Mary had been given much grace or unmerited favor from God. Even with God's favor, she would still suffer much. Although she was highly honored as the mother of the Savior, she would know disgrace as an unwed mother. She nearly lost her fiancé. Her son was rejected and died on a cross. But her submission to God's plan would cost her dearly, yet she was willing to be God's servant. She gave birth to Jesus as her baby and watched him die as her Savior. Mary also knew the Scriptures. When the angels appeared and told her the baby would be God's son, Mary replied, "I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said." It's from Luke 1:38. Mary knew of the Old Testament prophecies about the coming Messiah. Another thing about Mary was how she was a strong woman. She was capable of walking the hill country of Judea while she was pregnant, of giving birth in the stable, making a 4 or 5 day journey on foot to Jerusalem once a year or so, sleeping outside, engaging in daily hard work at home. She was probably illiterate, since the women of this time rarely learned to read and write. This was a period in where oral transmission of information was typical. She was taught about the promised Messiah, and as a Jew, she had been learning about biblical prophecy her entire life. She became part of the fulfillment of God's plan when the angel declared, "You will conceive and give birth to a son." You are to call him Jesus. He will be the summit of the Most High and will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. You can find those verses in Luke 1:31 through 33. Mary was young, poor, and female, and these qualities made her unsuitable in the eyes of her people to be used mightily of God. But God saw Mary's trust and her obedience. He knew she would willingly serve him in one of the most important callings ever given to a human being. God looks at our obedience and trust, typically not the qualifications that humans consider important, but God will often use the most unlikely candidates to serve him. So let's look at some life lessons from Mary's life. She was willing to submit her life to God's plan, no matter what it cost her. Surely she expected Joseph to divorce her, or worse yet, he might even have her put to death by stoning, as the law permitted during that time. Mary may not have considered the full extent of her future suffering, but surely she knew that her life would hold many sacrifices as the mother of the Messiah. Being chosen by God for a high calling requires total commitment and a willingness to sacrifice everything out of love and devotion to our Savior. Some lessons from her life are that God's best servants are often ordinary people available to him, and that God's plans involve extraordinary events in ordinary people's lives, and that a person's character is revealed by his or her response to the unexpected. A question would be for reflection: are we like Mary? Are we willing to accept God's plan no matter the cost? Can we go a step further and rejoice in the plan as Mary did, knowing that his plan may cost us dearly? I want to read from Luke 1:46 through 50. And Mary said, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the mighty one who has done great things for me, holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation." When Mary said, "From now on, all generations will call me blessed," was she being proud? No. She was recognizing and accepting the gift God had given her. If Mary had denied this position, she would have been throwing away God's blessing back at him. Pride is when we refuse to accept God's gifts or take credit for what God has done. Humility is accepting the gifts and using them to praise and serve God. Don't deny, belittle, or ignore your gifts. Thank God for them and use those gifts for his glory. In closing, I want to read the words from one of my favorite Christmas songs, Mary, Did You Know? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? This child that you delivered will soon deliver you. Mary, did you know that your baby boy will give sight to a blind man? Mary, did you know that your baby boy will calm the storm with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels trod? When you kiss your little baby, you kiss the face of God. Mary, did you know? The blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again, the lame will leap, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know that your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day rule the nations? Did you know that your baby boy is heaven's perfect Lamb? The sleeping child you're holding is the great I Am. This month, I want to encourage you to find your Christmas story books and make them a part of your decorations this year. When one of your children or your grandchildren bring a book to you, read it to them. Be ready to stop and share. the story of Jesus' birth, because that is our true reason for Christmas. Also, if you have young children in your house, be sure to have a non-breakable nativity for them to hold and play with during this Christmas season. Thank you for joining me today for this devotion about Mary, the mother of Jesus, and her calling on her life, and how God calls us to serve Him as well. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.